Hey guys, Erito here. In this video, I will give you my thoughts on using VR for sim racing. And to make this clear, I am not a reviewer. This is not a review for the MetaQuest or any VR that I have used. This is just my opinion based on my experience in the past. To give you context, I've raced with a single screen when I started sim racing. Then I tried VR with my previous IMAX headset, and then I switched to triple screens after a short while. The reason I stopped VR at that point was because I had a defective headset that IMAX failed to fix with new lenses, so I decided to return it. So for this video, I'm going to ignore that bad experience that I had, and we'll fast forward to when I got my Quest 3 a few months later. In terms of immersion, VR is definitely the most immersive of the three configurations. You have the best depth perception, you can look around, you really feel like you're actually in a car. However, there is a big elephant in the room, and its name is FOV. As you'd expect, FOV is much better in VR than with a single screen, maybe even if you have an ultra-wide, but it's less than if you had triple screens. And this applies pretty much to every VR headset someone could reasonably afford, unless you get to like professional levels, like for training and things like that. And even then, it's going to be difficult because with a monitor, with triple monitors, you can go to 180 degrees or more, depending on the screens that you have and how you set them up. So VR sits between single and triple screens in terms of FOV. Also, keep in mind, I do not have any motion or haptic feedback system, so all my opinions are purely about the viewing of the games, nothing else. Now for comfort, I have a custom head strap for my Quest 3, which helps balance it a bit better, though it slightly interferes with my long hair, but not enough to stop me from using it. I have a stock interface, which is not incredibly comfortable. After longer sessions, it does get a bit warm for my face, but definitely not as warm as something like my old IMAX. This is totally bearable, unless it's the summertime, which we are approaching now, because I don't have an AC. I use the link cable because I prefer to be tethered, and I don't have a wireless connection at my rig, and I don't want to waste money on a dedicated router. Later in the video, I mention I use Virtual Desktop, which only supports wireless, and for that I am using a method that fakes my headset into thinking it's running wireless. I'll add that in the description. The app is called Gnirehtet. It's probably difficult for you to understand what I just said, but it's there in the description. I personally don't mind the cable too much with how I routed it. It's kind of around my neck and then goes under my arm to my PC, but sometimes I do notice it pulling on me, but again, it's never really bothered me enough to care changing it. For my next point is sense of speed. I think both VR and triples gives you the best sense of speed, but in different ways. In VR, you have your depth perception, so you can see exactly how far something is and how fast it's approaching, which can be very helpful, especially for practicing your braking zones into corners, learning the track in general. Even without using brake markers, you can see directly how close you are to something. With triples, your sense of speed comes mostly from your peripheral vision as you see things going past you. Thanks to, of course, the FOV advantage. And that can also help with your depth perception because you have more context of what's around you. Now, for my next point, this is where VR falls short for me and for a lot of people, and it's plugging and playing. With triples or singles, all you have to do is just press the play button, the sim opens, and you're ready to drive. With VR, you have to put the headset on, either through Ryzen Link or Virtual Desktop with the Quest 3, which may take a minute or more to load up. If I'm using custom overlays, I then have to make sure I open the software to throw my overlays into VR, or if it's a overlay like Race Lab, it has integrated VR support, so you can just press the button. It's much easier. For other overlays, I have to open OpenKneeboard, which is the app that works with everything, any overlays, any windows, anything pretty much, even a browser, and have to make sure everything is all capturing and being sent to the headset, and sometimes it's a bit finicky and it's quite annoying. Of course, you can just run the integrated overlays for whichever sim you play. I personally like to customize the information that I see and where I place it, and I also think LMU's non-customizable overlays are pretty terrible. I think VR still has a long way to go until it's fully plug and play for the average person. We need games to properly support everything natively. And by natively, I mean just press and play. All you have to do is just select which way you want to play the game, either VR or screen. And iRacing is probably the closest to that. iRacing actually has improved their own overlays quite significantly recently, and you can totally run with just those now. And as of this video, raceroom is also working on new UI updates, so we'll have to see how that turns out. And now, we're going to get into potentially the most important part, which is PC performance. This is where most of my struggles lie, not because my GPU doesn't have enough performance, but because it doesn't have quite enough video memory, or VRAM. In my experience, I have an RTX 4070 Ti with 12 gigs of memory, and I very often run into the limit of the memory with iRacing. I'll get into LMU in a moment, but this is the main reason why you don't see more VR content on my channel. I know for a fact VR gives me the most views. I look at the video analytics quite often, but I always spend more time making sure I'm not gonna lag or something because my memory reaches the limit. And yeah, I do all of that instead of actually practicing or racing. And it's really draining and a massive waste of time. I can do single manufacturer races just fine, but as soon as I add multiple manufacturers, and God forbid, multiple classes onto the track, my VRAM usage spikes very high. And that also happens with the most recent track updates on iRacing. I believe they are probably updating the tracks for the new graphics engine that's coming out at some point in the future. And once it reaches the memory limit, I start getting massive stuttering and low FPS, all the way down to like 20 FPS or less. and that's pretty much unplayable for VR. In iRacing, you can actually edit the INI file to limit the sim to not go over a certain amount of memory. It still happens, by the way, but it has improved quite a lot. I have found the limit for what I could set mine to before textures started to break, but LMU doesn't have the option to do that. You're basically just at the mercy of the devs, basically how much they optimize the game. In Raceroom, I've never ran into VRAM issues, but that game is also on a very old and less demanding graphics engine, and there are no custom libraries to make the memory go even higher. I'm usually sitting around 6 to 8 gigs of VRAM with it. However, just as I was writing the script for this video, I decided to retest LMU in the latest update, and I actually couldn't get it past about 9 gigabytes of VRAM in a 3-class AI race. So they must have done something in recent updates that improved it a lot. I believe there was actually a UI update. They redid the backend of the UI or something. I will have to do further testing in public lobbies with many custom liveries and see what happens. Let me know if you want to see game-specific VR testing videos. And speaking of testing, if you want to have very detailed benchmarking for VR in sim racing, I highly recommend you check Odyssey benchmarks. I'm never going into as much detail as they do, but they do a lot of testing and show a lot of numbers that are very useful to figuring out how the games perform. Another very important thing to keep in mind is that these recent results are using Virtual Desktop, which is a paid alternative to linking your headset to your PC. The reason I switched from using the Quest link is because the Horizon Link app on Windows uses a lot of VRAM. I've had it use sometimes 3.5 gigs just for linking my headset to my PC. And I don't understand why it's so high. I believe Virtual Desktop uses less than a gig, so it's a bit confusing. Just meta optimizations, am I right? Using Virtual Desktop also gives you a little better performance in general. Not to mention a lot more customization. You can perfectly tune the app to work as best as you can for your PC. Meta recently had a big issue with their Link app, and I made a support ticket about it, and at the end of it they actually compensated me with some credits for their store, which I then used to buy Virtual Desktop, so I basically got it for free from Meta's own mistakes. And finally, if you want to use custom overlays in VR, keep in mind that will also eat at your RAM, or VRAM I mean. From what I noticed, RaceLab's implementation is pretty well optimized, but if you want to use any other overlays that don't support VR natively, there's an app called OpenKneeboard. I have a video on it on how you can set up the app to capture any overlays to put in VR. In terms of raw performance, I've tuned my settings to run the games at around 80 FPS with the headset set to 80 Hz. I have tested and I've seen that I can do 90 Hz if I wanted to, but I prefer leaving a little bit of a headroom to add a bit more high candy and in case there are some performance inconsistencies. And iRacing is very inconsistent. from track to track, again because they've been updating some tracks and the newer tracks are much heavier on your system. I don't really have raw performance issues, which means any GPU with a similar performance to my 4070 or above should be able to handle VR perfectly, with iracing being the worst because of the whole VRAM issue. But if your GPU has 16 gigabytes, you'll probably be fine. Do keep in mind, iracing is also very CPU limited as of this video, so a better GPU may not necessarily give you much better performance, but this is also probably once you get into the 5090s. I will leave my PC specs in the description if you're curious. And if you got this far into the video, make sure you leave a like and a subscribe. If you want me to do more extensive testing, consider also supporting on Patreon, as these things take quite a long time. Like I said, this is my thoughts over a whole year of trying to set up everything and testing. But this is about everything I have to say for anyone who just wants to race in VR. But if you want to do content creation, there's a few more things to consider. This is why most content creators use triple screens or ultra-wide configurations. It's just the convenience and everything. But let me know in the comments if you want a video dedicated to this topic, because if I put it in this video, I will make it twice as long. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.